The roster churn never sleeps in college sports with the transfer portal, and no organization, no team, however talented, however prestigious, is immune from it. And Penn State wrestling now the latest victim of the transfer portal. Say victim. We reported here earlier on the show that they're going to get a strong candidate for their wrestling room out of the portal, and now another in maybe a concurrent decision enters the transfer portal. So Greg Pickle, he's got all the details for you. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. I give you the vague setup. Greg, what are the details here that we have as we talk about this on Wednesday evening about what's going on with Zack Ryder?
Yeah, so not long after we record it, which you can still go watch. There's still plenty of good info in there. The BWI Wrestling Show, it's up over on this YouTube channel you're watching this on. We've talked about the fact that Penn State landed Rocco Welsh from Ohio State out of the transfer portal, that he lost to Carter Starachi in the 174-pound NCAA final in 2024, that he redshirted last year at Ohio State and bumped up to 184, wrestling unattached at the end of the season. He went into the transfer portal on Sunday. He picked Penn State. Which leads us to the reason we're on this video at the moment is that Zack Ryder, the redshirt freshman, top class of 2024 signee that came to Penn State last year. Some thought maybe he'd find his way into the lineup as a true freshman. It turns out, like most of his class, he ended up redshirting this past season, and that was all with a plan to bulk up, get ready to wrestle 184 pounds once Carter Starachi graduated. And so Carter, of course, just won his 5th NCAA title. He is moving on. And before Sunday, when Penn State landed Rocco Welsh, Zack Ryder was the heir apparent to that 184-pound spot. So Justin Basch reporting that first on Wednesday that he's going to head. Zack Ryder is going to head into the portal. Not a shock, considering what we just said. That
we openly talked about it on the show earlier today,
right.
Which doesn't make sense. You have too many names that have weight behind them to the spots that are available. So I guess, how do you read the situation in terms of the timing of these things? Obviously, Zack Ryder going in the portal after Rocco Welsh comes to the program, that makes sense. But the initial gaining of Welsh through the portal, I think, is the part where we were having the conversation. How does all this make sense? How do you read the timeline here? Or what do you take from other than the facts of the situation? What can you kind of read between the lines here without doing too much speculation, which I know you're a reporter, you don't love to speculate, but I'd like to get your opinion on kind of the gray areas of all of how this plays out.
Yeah, so I think Rocco Welsh obviously decided that for whatever reason things didn't work out at Ohio State. Again, he's been somewhat vocal about the fact that there was maybe some misunderstanding, miscommunication, whatever it was that ended up with him redshirting last year at Ohio State didn't sit well with him, and it doesn't sit well with many of these guys, of course. And no matter, I think, whatever was going to happen with Ohio State's lineup here in 2025, 2026, it just seemed to me that he had made a decision he was going to move on, find somewhere else to compete. However, he ends up at Penn State, the KD training guys. Obviously, there's a lot of connections to KD training. Zack Ryder, Rocco Welsh among them in the Penn State wrestling room. We talked about that a little bit earlier with Jade and Dave James, the new Penn State class of 2026 commit. So all these guys know each other. Everyone knows what Penn State accomplishes, and it seems like Rocco Welsh wanted to be a part of that. And that was a situation where he said, okay, I know what I have to compete with and against, and not just this year, but in the future potentially, knowing what Penn State continues to bring in this room to stay in the lineup, and he was okay with that. He comes to Penn State and says, if I'm going to be the best, I'm going to have to beat the best, essentially. And so he comes into this room, and I'm sure Zack Ryder felt a certain type of way about it. What guy wouldn't in that? What wrestler wouldn't in that situation? Athlete wouldn't in that situation? However you want to put it. But for Zack Ryder, in terms of the timing of everything, this was Sunday that Welsh committed. I'm sure it was well known in the inner workings of college wrestling that he was going to likely wind up at Penn State before that. So Zack Ryder had some time to figure this out, but we talk about this more in football than in wrestling. But if you're going to go into the portal, you better know where you're coming out of it, or you can be left in a situation that is not opportune for you whatsoever. Now, Zack Ryder's the kind of guy that he would have landed on his feet somewhere. I mean, we're talking about a U20 silver medalist in 2024. Again, 4-time New York State champ without wrestling his senior year of high school, which is absurd. Came and trained at M2, the place that Mark McKnight, David Taylor, those guys ran before David Taylor left for Oklahoma State. I'll answer the next question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the odds are significant that he will end up in Stillwater at Oklahoma State with David Taylor. That would be, I think, what most would assume is the logical outcome here. We'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. Again, he's going to be highly regarded, highly coveted in the transfer portal. Zack Ryder will be. So, we'll see. But I think if you polled 1,000 people who follow wrestling at any level, media, fans, coaches, whatever, I think all 1,000 of you would probably tell you that it's more likely than not he ends up at Oklahoma State. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But, I was actually going back through some of our conversations, T. Frank, last year on this show, a little bit later in the year, but somewhat around this time. And we were talking about the fact that with David Taylor, it was actually after David Taylor left for Oklahoma State, and could that lead to Penn State facing some portal challenges it hasn't had in the past? You have guys, Terrell Barraclaw is the most recent example, stay at Penn State most of their career, leave for a chance late in their career to be an All-American, be a national champ once they realize there's not a spot for them in the lineup. Michael Beard, Lehigh, same thing. Seth Nevels went down to Maryland. He was a national qualifier this year. There's been examples of it, but now you have, just this week alone, you have Alex Facundo, former national qualifier for Penn State, who dropped down to 57 after doing that at 65, did not win the job over Tyler Kasak, multiple years of eligibility left. He's now committed to Oklahoma State. You had some other guys that, were contributors to this Penn State team, not in the starting lineup, though, that are now moving on this offseason. Zack Ryder is now just the latest one, of course. Difference in maybe how we were framing that conversation back then is that we did not, I don't think, see coming. Well, no, I don't say don't think. I know we did not see coming Penn State adding Rocco Welsh to compete with Zack Ryder for that job. So
yeah,
it's all how it works out. Will this be the last wrestler Penn State loses in the transfer portal? Will see. Will Welsh be the only one they get out of the portal? We'll see. Like we said on the show, again, you can go listen to it here on the BWI YouTube channel. Just keep in mind what we're talking about with the Welsh Ryder conversation. Keep this video in mind. But the biggest thing to me, T. Frank, is that the portal's still open for a month. It's open until May 2nd. So there's still more time for things to shake out.
Yeah.
Incoming and outgoing for Penn State. We'll see if anything else happens, but I would say it's safe to say at this point that certainly the most active portal season for Penn State since it became a thing a number of years ago.
So I guess the last question is, and I know that this may be an unfair one, but it's just where my mind goes. I think there's a lot of equating 1-to-1. Plus, is this a plus or a minus for Penn State in terms of gaining Welsh, losing Ryder? How do you view the prospects? It feels like Penn State is picking between the best possible options that literally all other programs would like to have. But I guess I want to fold in another aspect of that. What you just laid out there of being able to keep guys in the room, really good wrestlers that increase the level of competition and really make this team as good as it is to have that competition, to then have the absolute best outcomes happen on the mat. Is Penn State, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, is that era over, or is it coming to a close, or is it diminishing because of what's happening now? And then how do you view this transactory situation with Welsh and Ryder?
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to go that far yet. Of course, We'll see how the portal plays out. Certainly, it's the first one I can remember at Penn State, obviously, in quite some time. We'll see if there's any more fallout. But again, it's just, so 184 is a bit of a unique example, 184 pounds, where these two guys were going to compete for a starting spot at Penn State, because there's a lot of turnover in the weight class, which means there's a lot of schools looking for potential big-name starters at that weight class. And it's not the case for every weight class, of course. So I think that's one thing you have to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out is more of this coming or not at Penn State and in any other school. Some weight classes will be viewed differently than others in this year, next year, so on and so forth. But 84 is I don't want to say it's completely wide open, because it's not, but there's a lot of All-Americans not back in 2025, 2026. So if you think you're of that quality and you think the other guy you're going to have to beat is of that quality, it makes sense if one of them says, okay, well, I'm going to go try and find a place where I can have a better path to being on the mat as a starter to potentially be an All-American. So when you talk about the Ryder, well, it's basically, the change there for Penn State. I think you are giving you're losing the potential of Zack Ryder, again, a U20 silver medalist, to accomplish just about everything at the prep level. Haven't seen it at the college level yet. Not a big deal always, but can be sometimes. For Rocco Welsh, a guy who made it to the NCAA finals 2 years ago, 10 pounds lighter. And what does he look like when he's not wrestling unattached at different tournaments, but he's wrestling the Big Ten's best and your non-conference opponent's best, and then things like that. So that's the question. I think that his past, you get with Rocco Welsh, you get past college level results. It's just not in the current weight class he's going to compete in. So interesting to see how this all plays out. No matter where Zack Ryder ends up, there will be plenty of college wrestling fans hoping that those two meet on the mat sometime next season, either in the regular season or the postseason, to kind of settle this very question.
Yeah.
It's just another reminder that as college athletics change, everything about all sports change. It's not just football, not just basketball, not just wrestling. They all change in different ways with roster management, things like that. And this is an instance where, Penn State brings a guy in, loses a guy in the same weight class. Is it the last time this offseason? Maybe, probably not. I don't know. But I know we'll have it covered here for you at Blue White Illustrated. And if you can put your hat on anything as a Penn State fan, Cale Sanderson and his bunch are going to put the best lineup on the mat to continue their success that they've had for years now with the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, they've found the formula of success, and I don't think that any of the shifting landscape, I wouldn't expect them to be caught off guard by any of this stuff. So, as Greg said, the portal is open. If you're watching this on Wednesday, portal is open for another month. So any of these things could happen. More players could leave the program. And the best way to know about that and to get this conversation, to get another bonus 12 minutes of wrestling content here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, is to subscribe to the channel, enable notifications so you know when breaking news happens. And we post all of our other content as well. So for Greg Pickle, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Stay tuned for the next breaking news from Penn State Wrestling.